Hello fun people, I'm Isaac Carlson, and today I want to finally discuss the biggest twist in Lightyear, how Buzz Lightyear transformed into Zurg.
Dad?
Now, there have been a variety of backstories for Zurg. In the series Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, he was a robotic humanoid. In Toy Story 2, the Zurg toy believed he was Buzz Lightyear's father, which would mean he must have been a human who became dependent on his robotic suit. But in Lightyear, Zurg is actually Buzz Lightyear 50 years in the future from a different timeline. And personally, I wasn't too excited by this reveal and the characterization of Zurg overall, even though there were precedents set in Buzz Lightyear of Star Command that established an evil Buzz Lightyear and a Buzz Lightyear from the future, but they both were independent of one another and Zurg. The evil Buzz was recruited by Zurg from another universe where he successfully destroyed Star Command. I made a whole video about him years ago, which I've linked down below, and the old Buzz actually had a similar mission to Zurg and Lightyear, since both stories showed Buzz sending himself into the past to save one of his closest friends. In Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, Buzz hoped to save Mira Nova, and of course in Lightyear, he came back to return Alicia Hawthorne to Earth. Now, in Lightyear, Buzz and Zurg had exactly the same early lives. They both were born on Earth. They attended the Space Ranger Academy. They became best friends with Alicia. They crashed the turnip and were desperate to get everyone home. But their paths differed after they stole the XL-15 starship in a last effort to prove they had discovered how to synthesize hyperspeed crystals. In Zurg's timeline, Commander Burnside was prepared to arrest Buzz for going rogue and being insubordinate, so Buzz left Takani Prime angered that his people were unwilling to be saved. He evaded responsibility for his actions, turned his back on his people, and allowed his rage towards Star Command to consume him. All decisions that feel very unlike Buzz Lightyear. Zurg fled from his problems at hyperspeed for years, sending him far into the future, and when Zurg was confronted with advanced alien technology, he took it for himself. Honestly, this part kind of didn't make sense to me, since I don't really understand how an advanced civilization could be toppled by a single human from hundreds of years in the past, but regardless, Buzz found a way to take control of a powerful mothership and an army of robots who only referred to him as Zurg. I do feel like it's kind of weird the army can only say Zurg, since they're supposed to be more advanced than anything we've ever seen, but whatever. With advanced alien technology in his possession, Zurg then began to develop a hyperdrive that could use his crystal to travel back in time.
If we can use this crystal to go forward in time, why not use it to go back?
To accomplish this, he required a similar setup for the hypercrystals they once used in the turnip. Buzz even recognized the device when he was on board Zurg's mothership, and Zurg admits that he borrowed the parts, which I eventually realized meant that Zurg probably returned to Takani Prime to get them.
So we designed all of this?
Oh no, this is all, borrowed.
But I don't think he would have done that peacefully, because Zurg's mind had become warped by his passion to accomplish his mission. And to make matters worse, Zurg had an incorrect understanding of time travel throughout Lightyear. You see, to Zurg, everything he does in the present and future will eventually be erased when he travels into and changes the past.
We can just continue the mission home.
And none of this will have ever happened.
That's why he's okay with destroying Alicia's granddaughter Izzy and murdering Buzz, since he thinks his intervention in history will ensure they all turn out better once he stops the turnip from crash landing. But that's not what actually happens when Zurg travels into the past.
She's not gonna miss anyone if she never meets them in the first place.
Zurg knows he changes the outcome of everyone's lives when he goes back in time.
I've broken time. This is a new now that's never been lived.
But the alterations to history he makes do not actually affect him, which means that the timeline Zurg came from is isolated from the one Buzz is experiencing. If time was on one path, then Zurg's actions in the past would have changed who he was in the present. The Buzz we know and Zurg are clearly two completely different entities. What I think this means is that when Zurg traveled into the past, he created a branch in the original timeline. Zurg's timeline had Buzz become Zurg, and it's there where Zurg discovers time travel. But once Zurg actually travels into the past, the point where he goes back to is where a new timeline branches off from the original. So it's actually in an alternate timeline where Zurg becomes the sworn enemy of Buzz Lightyear. But what does this all mean? The truth is that Zurg's plans would have never actually worked, even if Zurg had successfully stolen Buzz's hypercrystal so he could stop the turnip from crashing in the past. That would not have stopped the Alicia from Zurg's timeline from living out her life on Takani Prime. All Zurg would have ever created was another timeline where Alicia was able to leave the planet, but he was never going to be able to alter his own timeline. Buzz's mistake would always exist. With an incorrect understanding of what he was actually doing across time, I think Zurg is under the belief that his actions truly can't have negative consequences as long as he completes his mission. Along his time travel adventure though, we know that Zurg came to realize his own hypercrystal was burning out, so Zurg had to figure out how to obtain another crystal, which kind of feels like a goofy issue to have since far less advanced humans originally discovered how to make hypercrystals, and Sox was able to decipher the correct combination in a little over 60 years. Zurg supposedly has technology we could never dream up, yet none of his new computing power is able to figure out how to recreate the crystal. Couldn't a machine take a sample to understand the chemistry of the crystal? Or couldn't a hyper-intelligent computer speed up the same simulation Sox used? Or does that mean Zurg never figured out how all of the new technology worked? There's not really a great explanation for why Zurg couldn't figure out the hypercrystal issue on his own, especially since he was able to eventually discover time travel. Regardless of why Zurg couldn't get a hold of new hypercrystal though, he eventually determined the only way he knew how to obtain another was to go back in time to when he discovered his hypercrystal worked. And unfortunately, I kind of think he made poor decisions here too. Zurg supposedly traveled far into the future, so why was it the case that his crystal could only bring him back to his first successful flight test, but it couldn't take him back a few more decades to when the turnip crashed? And if Zurg really couldn't reach the first day he was on Takani Prime, wouldn't it make more sense to travel back to when Sox first discovered how to create stable hypercrystals? Zurg had Sox all those years later, so Sox could have literally given him the exact time and date they needed to return to. Plus at that point, Buzz had not stolen the XL-15, so he wasn't a fugitive yet. And if you went a bit before that, Zurg could have seen Alicia alive too, and then Zurg would have been free to manufacture as many hypercrystals as he wanted. But instead of following my plan, Zurg decided to go back a week before Buzz returned from his flight test with the stable hypercrystal. That decision gave him enough time to imprison Takani Prime civilians in their force field so they would not be present to attempt to arrest Buzz, and it gave Zurg time to send out his army to the exact location Buzz would land so that he could immediately take possession of the crystal. Of course, Zurg didn't actually do that since there was only one robot present where Buzz landed. Again, another decision I don't understand. I mean, why would Zurg be sitting in his mother's ship when Buzz arrived with a stable hypercrystal? If Zurg truly thought everything he was doing was good and just, it feels like he should have believed that when Buzz came back to the planet, all he would need to do is explain to Buzz his plan so that he would give him the crystal. I mean, later in Lightyear, when Zurg actually does that, Buzz believes he has a great plan, and the only reason Buzz doesn't go along with it is because he got to know Izzy Hawthorne while he was attempting to flee from the powerful killer robots that were hunting them. Zurg was creating problems for himself because he refused to just go speak to himself. See, the more I think about Zurg's whole existence in Lightyear, the less I feel like anything was really thought through. There's just so many leaps in logic we have to embrace and bad decisions we have to accept. Like, why was Zurg trying to shoot down Buzz when he was in possession of the crystal that was highly explosive? There was no reason for Zurg to go on the offensive before he even talked to Buzz. And it all just makes Zurg less of an intimidating threat, which really isn't helped by the fact that we know he's an old man in a robotic suit. In response to some frustration around Zurg in general, I've heard theories that the alternate version of Buzz we meet in Lightyear isn't the true Zurg, and that in a sequel or in follow-up stories, a different Zurg will be introduced from the future, but I don't think that's going to be the case. Lightyear is supposed to show us everything we need to know about the origins of Buzz Lightyear, so it doesn't make sense that his relationship with Zurg would suddenly change as we see more of his adventures. Zurg might be or may become an evil emperor, but throughout Lightyear, we never truly get to see that through his actions. Maybe he wiped out advanced aliens and destroyed Takani Prime in his timeline, but that is never shown. Instead of being a purely evil being, Zurg is portrayed throughout the story as someone who distorted his purpose and mission because he was unwilling to move on from the past. But he isn't very effective at executing on his plans, even with an army in a powerful robotic suit. In my video explaining Lightyear's ending, which I've linked down below, I did brainstorm how Zurg may rise to establish a terrifying empire to combat the Galactic Alliance, but for now, he's a naive old man who is impulsive, lacks the ability to be tactical, and seems to not think through his own actions. On his rise to become Zurg, that original version of Buzz Lightyear forgot what it meant and how to be a space ranger. But fun people, what do you think of an alternate version of Buzz Lightyear turning out to be Zurg? Let me know in the comments, consider subscribing for more magical videos, and of course, thanks for watching and have a magical day.